Hello, everybody, and we are in a different studio this evening. Since we're working with oils, I am working with a little bit more caution in a different studio tonight. So, welcome once again to Jason's Draw and Paint Club. What we'll be working on tonight is that preview that I sent you guys with the event out, and that's something that I've had tabled for a little while now, that I haven't really approached or played around with for over a year, since before COVID. And wanted to, we were talking last week about revisiting old work and whatnot. And this piece came to mind, like, why not finish it? I've been working on all these landscapes. I've been working on all this painting. So let's have at it. Here we go. Let me just switch the cameras here so that we can actually see what we're working on. Let's see if the not bad. Not bad. All right, so here we go. I'm going to be trying to focus on what I'm doing. Hello, Marge. At the same time that I am painting, so Mike is closer to me when I'm at the painting. I will be kind of moving the camera around a little bit to show you different areas that I'm playing with. And tonight, what are we listening to? Well, my amazing composer friend, Andre Sals, whom I went to high school with and part of junior high with, has composed a brand new album. It's available on Bandcamp. It's called 20. And so I'll be playing 20 for you this evening. As a reminder, please download the HAPS app so you can subscribe and get notified when I go live. It also helps to support my work on HAPS. You can give me little compliments or little what they call awards, and just kind of like tell me how I'm doing and make sure that I can keep running like this. It's one of those things where I'm having a blast doing it, and well, let's get started. First track is called 20. All right, hands in the picture. For this, I work with a much different set of things. For instance, I work with a monster palette. It is my giant monster palette. And I also work with a totally different set of brushes because, you know what, I'm gonna move the camera over here so you guys can see the setup for this. So the oils I'm gonna be using are water mixable oils by Winsor Newton. They're called Artisan. And the reason I do that is because oil cleanup and chemical stuff, etc., when it comes to working with oils is really hazardous and it's nasty and I don't like it. So having water mixable and, oils that can interact with water and can get cleaned with water, I don't have to use as many thinning agents, as many chemicals to do things. So it does make life a little easier. So I'm going to start up here in the left-hand quadrant. Anything that I'm doing when it comes to oil painting tonight can be applied to anything you're painting. It just so happens this particular painting is of space. And man, I love doing space fantasy. So we're going to have some fun tonight playing around with space fantasy. All right, let's get started because I'm bored with me too. So we're going to grab some titanium white because we love titanium white. It's always our favorite. We use it on everything. And I'm not going to put a lot out right now. I'm just going to put little bits of things and I'll add to it as I go along so that I don't waste my paint. I'm going to grab a little bit of my Payne's Gray, which Payne's Gray has a nice little bit of blue tone to it. So that helps when I'm trying to create like metallics, particularly silvery sort of tones. I'm going to grab a little bit of lamp black. Yes, I know. Don't use black, Jay. It flattens things. I don't care. I'm an illustrator. I get to flatten things. But I don't use a lot of it anyway. I temper what I do with that. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to start off with chunking in this ship that's flying off in the back over here. And I'm going to kind of use a lot of white, but I definitely want to have some of the gray mixed in. That paint's great. Again, it's so good for stuff like steel. I find anyway, good for steel and things because it has a really nice bluish tone to it. And so I'm going to grab just one of my kind of like fill-in brushes and just go with this. Now, one of the things that I've been doing here is that I've been painting this as if it is going off the page, and I've actually been utilizing the fact that I bought a gallery canvas for this. The difference for gallery canvas is that the gallery canvas has like a 1 5/8 inch border around it. It's stretched. Move this here. So you can do this. So I paint my scenes around it and continue things as they go. So this is going to get painted on the top as well. As bizarre and silly as that sounds, it actually, I love the effect. Because I see wrapped canvases all the time in stores as kind of like, you know, they're really laser prints onto canvas. And what I find funny about them is that they're done in such a manufactured way that if they don't plan it right, you can actually see the painting starting over again on what you're purchasing. So it's, you know, it's kind of like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? That doesn't help anybody. What was the point of wrapping it if you're just going to repeat it? I mean, giclées are one thing where, you know, there's a different printing process, but generally in a giclée, one of the things that's standard is that the artist will sign it or will actually do some work on it. So it's not just a print, it actually has some hand work to it. I do sell prints, but I don't do enough business with that. I have them high quality printed and I do them kind of one off at a time. So they're made to order. And I always sign them and number them, and you know, whatever the edition is, I make sure that it's all there. But I also want to make sure that you're getting, you know, the quality of product you wanted. And that means that I have to kind of like really, really find printers that'll handle my work in a way that I kind of want it to be seen. I don't want you to end up with an inferior thing. But most of my work is custom. Most of it is done to order. I just finished a really lovely little picture for a friend out in Chicago who is having a child. It's a very fun little picture. It's got, you know, they have a couple of dogs that sadly crossed the Rainbow Bridge, so they wanted a picture of the dogs with their incoming child, which I thought was very endearing and lovely. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And so I've got those two little dogs kind of up in the air over the crib. Well, they're not little dogs. They're actually pretty big dogs. They're Goldens. And then they have one remaining Golden who is sleeping in front of the crib, and the baby, the soon-to-be baby, is actually inside the crib, snoozing away. It's really cute. I'm not popping up a picture of it because it's a private commission, and I don't want to, put out there a private commission without getting the go ahead from the client. So these ships in the background are very, for right now, kind of vague. Just want to make them there. Well, thank you, Marge. Yeah, thank you. I it's not like, artist-client confidentiality or anything, but it is one of those where I want to make sure that, people are respected. And I don't name my clients unless they tell me they would like that sort of thing to happen, which is never. Actually, it's not never. The corporate clients really like when I mention them because it usually gives them extra stuff. So like Coffee Connection loves when I tag them in photos. Just finished a whole slew of work for them. Boy, was that fun. Oh, still working on some of it though. There's quite a bit left, large mural size. I'm actually going to be, I have to build a custom easel to be able to paint it. It's actually kind of, for me, that's an interesting sort of little, not conundrum, but challenge. Because if you can see, I have a piece of wallboard in the back. Oh, you can't see that. I have a piece of wallboard in the background. I have a piece of wallboard in the background. And the next two murals are 4 foot by 6 foot. And Harley Bartlett, who is an amazing, beyond amazing realist and surrealist and mural painter, saw one of the murals as I was working on it on a ladder, and asked if I had ever considered using the methodology of stretching canvas and then applying it like wallpaper. And I didn't even know that was necessarily an option. I mean, some clients just really like it on their wall. But evidently that's how he does his, and he's done several churches, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Works primarily in the Boston area. He's a member of the Providence Art Club. And I have loved his work for a very long time. I have tremendous respect for him and his work. And so he shared with me how to do it. And I used it on the latest piece that went up in there. If you've been watching my Instagram, you've probably seen the picture of the flower mural that went up. That's actually a surreal piece. The flowers hitting the clouds up toward the top. The problem with water mixable. So it's almost, it's one of those things where it was so nice to get the help from a fellow artist, and artists we usually try to help each other out because it's a hard business. This is not easy. And although it's not my primary thing, I mean, I teach full time. It's still something that's very, very, key to me. And I use it as a method of income all the time. Because I'm constantly teaching and making art, and I'm a public school teacher. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but that usually means, yeah, my salary is great. I'm okay with it. I'm fine. But you still kind of like I got a lot of side hustles. I'm not really good at sitting still. Ask my wife. You know, some people joke that their spouses like never stop and they're always running around and they're hard to. Yeah, well, my poor wife has to deal with me and my ADHD. I'm putting her up for canonization, actually. If anybody wants to vote in on that. So it looks like we got a lot of views going on. Not a lot of comments, though. Guys, once again, remember, if you are watching on YouTube or on HAPS, please subscribe. You'll be able to see what videos I'm coming up with. I am going to start doing videos off of HAPS as just separate entities. A lot of those end up on Vimeo. I do have a Vimeo channel. All of my stuff is tagged Jason Robert Leclaire. So if you're ever looking for any of the work that I've done, if you just look up at Jason Robert Leclaire or you look up the art of it, whatever it is, you can find me at that particular thing. So my Vimeo station is vimeo.com/ guess what? Jason Robert Leclaire. So you've got lots of fun stuff in there. I got lots of tutorials going on. But most importantly, I will point you to my website, because all of the ways to get a hold of my artwork and what I do are available on the website. The website is, oh, you know what? You're not even really seeing what I'm painting right now. There we go. I'm off on this ship over here. Cartoonsandcreatures.com, which I think is relatively aptly named. Considering that's my general focus most of the time. So sci-fi fantasy illustration, all that fun stuff. Love it, love it, love it. Have a lot of fun doing it. And I should probably like do some tutorials during this tutorial, huh? So let's talk about oil paint. Right now, you're seeing things that look very much like working with acrylics. Everything pretty much functions the same, except for one really giant important factor. This oil paint will take a very, very long time to dry. In fact, it's recommended that you wait 6 months before varnishing. I don't know anybody who does that, but since it's oil, it's not really going to, quote unquote, dry. It's going to settle. It's going to be less less, you know, not volatile, that's the wrong word. Less pliable. You won't be able to work with it as much the older it gets. So one of the good things about oil paints is that you can work with them for a very long time and go back in and change things as you work. I have a lot of fun going back into things and making small changes. Oh, thank you so much, Charisma. It's so nice to see you. Friends from the Artist Lounge. I love it. So if you are an artist, by the way, and you're watching this, if you happen to be on Clubhouse, one of the best spaces I've found is the Artist Lounge. I'm going to shamelessly plug them, though I don't think they would mind so much. It's a great place. They have a artist and creative hangout, but they also have a lot of kind of like specific rooms that they put on throughout the week that are really, really important topics that are being covered that really affect artists and the art world and what we do. And so if you are on Clubhouse, I would highly recommend going and seeking them out and searching them, and just dabbling in and seeing what it's all about, because the folks that are in charge of that are really, really good. If you're on Discord, we have a Discord as well on that. Well, they have a Discord. Listen to me, I'm talking like I'm an admin. Whoops. Too much, too thin. So again, when you're working with oils, there's a couple of different ways to thin an oil or to get a different effect from an oil. So right now you've been seeing me use just basic thinner. So I'm grabbing the oil paint and I'm just thinning it with, in this case, these particular oils are water thinnable. So I've been using water to do that. But you've got a couple of different things that you can use as well that give you different effects. So there's stand oil and linseed oil. Both of these oils have different effects, different sheens, different textures that they make with the oil paint. Also, they sell a fast drying medium. So if you really are impatient and you just can't wait for the thing to dry, or you're working on a piece of a project that's just like really, really needs to get dry so you can maneuver on to the next portion of the project, or you just want like a base layer to dry quickly, whatever your reasoning is, the fast drying medium really does help, and it really does work quite well. The only problem is it does make it a little bit more not as fluid. So you've got to kind of water it down at the same time, which is odd when you're playing around with it. It's just finding the right chemical combinations. And again, that's why I use the water soluble, because I really don't like messing with all the chemicals. My studio's at home, and you know, I've got my family are people that I don't want to necessarily be inhaling all the oils. If I do, it's fine because I'm already a little bonkers. Yeah, the gouache is definitely more forgiving. I'm not a gouache fan. I find it frustrating. I like things to be solid. I like the opacity of gouache. I really don't like when I'm working with gouache and it reconstitutes on me while I'm trying to get it to be flat. And all of a sudden it starts mixing with other stuff. That makes me very unhappy. But that's me. I think I'm actually, for the little thing that we got going down here, yeah, I'm not going to mix in oils yet. I'll mix in oils when I start on the next section, when I'm actually going to be working within these things. Ooh, yeah. You know what? I've seen that. It's acrylic gouache, right? So you get that same kind of like flat, beautiful opacity, but it's acrylic, so it doesn't reconstitute. I should probably try that. I should probably try that live online for the first time and see what happens. Doesn't reactivate. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold. You got me. I'm doing it. I'll be going out and getting some. You guys make me spend money. So I'll have to do a tutorial on that once I, or just a trial on it. You know what? I don't have to tutor everything and make sure that I'm proficient in every medium for these things. I can, this is a draw and paint club. We can just go ahead. I'll announce it ahead of time so everybody can grab some if they want it. Some of the acrylic gouache, and we can all try it together and see what happens. That's one of the fun things about this. I love going live. I love doing this with you guys because it's so much fun to paint with people. And even if you guys are just watching, I'm fine with that. Ooh, that is way too light. Yeah. What happened there, Jay? Oh, by the way, if you want to find out how the last one finished, the park scene, I will direct you to my Instagram, where I put up a shot of that all done and happy. What? You know what? I don't know what the name of Sci-Fi City is. We need to name it. I had imagined it was an outpost. At my little mining vehicle over here that's breaking up the ice caps and whatnot to provide water for the city. That's the fun part about doing fantasy illustration is, sometimes I have something that I'm asked to do, so it's not my idea. But on stuff like this, when I'm experimenting and practicing and doing my thing, I get to completely be super creative because this piece is technically for me. This is not any client work. This is something that I'm making because I'm teaching this class at RISD, and I like to have a portfolio with this. So I don't know, we got to name the city. So let's name the city. I think it's a grand idea. I think we definitely have to name the city. So it is a 3-mooned planet. And it is not an indigenous humanoid plant. I can tell you that right now. It's an indigenous arachnid-based, something like an arachnid. Based race, so got a lot of spiders going on there. Oop, I have it. Aha. I always love Star Trek for utilizing like different ancient belief systems to find their names because they meant something to what they were trying to put across. So this will be some variation of Ariadne. Need some variation of Ariadne, the Greek god of weaving, the spider goddess. So some variation of that. I don't know what that variant might be. Dear Chick World. No! I'm super petrified of ticks. I'll tell you that right now, Marge. Like that every time I hear that, I'm like, I like the band, but the name freaks me out. It's the one insect I just don't like the thought of something inserting its entire head into me gorging itself and then exploding. It seems so horribly alien to me, and it really, parasites get me. I don't like them. But I think maybe I should draw a deer tick at one point. Like actually draw a tick that's got big antlers on it. Maybe that'll make me feel better about it. So this is mostly Payne's Gray that I'm putting in here right now. And you know, if you're looking at the background all in here, there's a lot of me letting stuff wash. I love letting washes cascade down, letting gravity determine, you know, some of the stuff in here. I think that's, for me, what gives a lot of why I would even bother to use paint. You know, there's something about digital. They're trying to make it work this way. They're trying to make digital behave like paint does in the actual world. It's getting there. Yeah, a real kick. Take control of your paint. And chaos theory incarnate, just kind of like explode out on what you're doing, and you don't have control. You just got to let it go. You can twist it, you can turn it, you can do whatever you like with it, but the bottom line is it's going to be unpredictable. It's going to have a life all its own, and I think that's why I do it, is because I want it to have some sort of life. I want it to be almost defining itself when it starts. You know, I spend a lot of time trying to force paint to do what I want it to do throughout, and I don't usually get a time to not do that. So what I'm doing right now, by the way, with the oils is I'm going to zoom in on this piece that I'm working on right now so you can see what I'm doing. Oof, that light. Turn off that light. Maybe it'll, pardon my hand. Come on. Oof, I can't get it off. I'll just use both hands. That way I won't have the hand in the frame there. Nope, it's not liking me right now. Sorry, everybody. Anyway, let's see if I can get it at a different angle so you can see things better. That's not bad. Okay. That's much better. All right, so what I'm going to keep doing here is I'm actually working, I should be working with a much thinner brush for what I'm doing right now. In fact, I'm going to switch over. And I'm taking the titanium. One of the things that I love about oils is the sheer brightness and vivid colors you get from stuff like the titanium white, especially gives you such a beautiful sheen to it. And in oils, mixing them on the canvas and getting like beautiful gradients is so easy because they remain wet so long and they're pretty forgiving for that reason, so you can go back in. The hard part is that you have to be very, very, very careful when you're laying stuff on. Because it's just as hard to get off. it smudges everywhere if you're not handling it properly. So this is just one of those things where just adding a little bit of detail right now gives me a better gist of where I'm going with this. And I can keep bringing in those details. There's a lot of stuff in here I'd probably use a signature brush for. And right now I'm just using, a number 4 round. But a liner brush would certainly allow me to get even finer in here and get in some real tight detail. This is allowing me to just kind of like pull a little bit of a line and start getting that in there. What also is going to be good is that I did the old sci-fi classic giant glass bubble thing up the top on this because I love that. I love that. I just, the thought of being in a giant glass bubble out in the middle of space just freaks me out a little bit, but it's just so cool. And the imaginations of all the artists from, the 1940s, when this originally started to become a thing, like really, really a thing. Sci-fi fantasy illustration, kind of took off. And aliens were really like, that was the subject matter of so much fantasy. Because the prospects were so high as to what we could do after the technology leap during World War II. So you ended up with a whole different range of illustration arts and stories, etc., where, sci-fi was huge, but it's also a good kind of escapist thing. If you're going to get off of a world that's full of war and, the horrors of what was going on, you literally make another world. Also, it didn't hurt that Superman came out in 1938. And Detective Comics, DC really introduced the world to their brand of superhero, which was, for the most part, either mythical or literally otherworldly. So they kind of like woke up the imagination at that time, thinking about the possibility of life elsewhere. What would it look like? Are they like us? It's there. Our gathering of our ice and water. That is migrating down where I don't want it. There we go. That'll work for now. Okay, I'm getting away from the ships because I need those to sit for a little bit. And I'm going to work over here on this section, which is, there's a set of like rock formations that the city's built on and around. And again, I went with the drips, what was happening with the paint when I just let it loose when I was doing the background. So I want to get this rock formation to pop out because right now it's sinking into them. And I want to kind of reflect a lot of these red tones and stuff down here. I do not want this to be more ice. I got plenty of ice over here. We're going to kind of like play with a little bit of the reddish over here. Although, did I start it with ice? Oh, darn it, I did. I did start that with ice. Well, looks like I got to finish that with ice. No biggie. Bad TV. So I'm grabbing my white again because the white that I have out right now is tainted with Payne's Gray and Black. So I need a new little dollop of white. Just to give you an idea, I'm not like doing a lot either. I only put out a little tiny bit of each color. You know, I don't do a lot of each color because I'm not going to use it. Next color we have is Cerulean Blue, which is one of my faves. It's kind of, when you put enough, when you add the white into it, you end up with this like really interesting sort of tealish thing going on, which is beautiful in my opinion. And what other color did I have playing around with these guys? Looks like I had a cobalt. Yep, I had a cobalt. Okay, so I got my cobalt, my cerulean, and my white. And we're going to start by actually trying to do a little bit of color match off of these over here or off this over here. So it looks like I've got, let's bring you down to the palette here. So it looks like I've got the cobalt. And the good thing is that like this palette is just keep using it. It's got what I used already on it for the last time. So I can kind of color match into where I am instead of having to reinvent the wheel. Looks like I had a little green going on around here somewhere. I'm going to look for my green. But which green was it? I wonder. I think I need that one. It's not the permanent sap green. Gotta be my Theta Saline. We all know how much you know what? I like Theta Saline because I like saying Theta Saline. Yeah, there was an artist that did. Oh my gosh, you have a look at my feet right now. That's a totally not entertaining view. Oh, look at his palette. That's much better. Okay. There was an artist that did a month worth of self-portraits. And as he did them, there we go. That's all it needed. Theta Saline. As he did them, he didn't show the portraits when he did the exhibit. He showed the palettes. So each palette was a glass palette or a clear acrylic palette, I forget. And he hung up the palettes as the artwork. I just painted my camera. Which I thought was absolutely brilliant. It was at the RISD and museum, and it was beautiful. There we go. Yeah, I needed that green. It's a nice contrast. but I do not need that brush. By the way, normally I would recommend if you are painting with oils or mixing paints, to use a palette knife if you can. It's a much neater way to do it than, it kind of mangles your brushes if you use the brushes all the time. For me, it's out of habit. I grab them. I really shouldn't. Bad Jay. As part of having done this for so long is that I developed some great habits and some not so good habits. When it comes to oils, though, just kind of getting a little bit off topic, sort of. I started doing oils because my wife and I were down in Sarasota, Florida, and we're walking around. They had a whole bunch of art galleries and places where people were selling and whatnot. And there was a guy that was live painting during a show of his work. And, he was using oils and he was doing wave forms, classic stuff that you would do in Florida, right? But they were super dramatic and super vibrant and beautiful. And, I was I was starting to rebirth my career as an artist, with lots of thanks to my wife for supporting me in that. And she asked me, why don't you ever use oils? And frankly, the reason why I hadn't used oils at that point was because I was kind of scared to use oils. It was intimidating. And I always kept using the excuse, oh, well, they're toxic and it's not something I want to bring into the house, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. And then I found the Winsor Newton Artisans. Now, granted, these are not paints that if you're not, like, they have cheaper versions of this. If you're not going to be doing a lot of oil painting and you're not going to be, or you're not a professional and you're sinking into doing this, I would not advise starting with anything but a basic kit. Just for some basic colors to get me started on this. I went to Blick because you got to buy all new brushes too. You can't use the same brushes you've been using with acrylic. You got to use other brushes, or with watercolor. You should always have different brushes for each. Although watercolor and acrylic brushes, you can kind of mingle them a little bit. It's not going to really hurt anything so much. But if you're doing oils and acrylic, you should have two sets of brushes. So by the time I was done at Blick, they loved me there. I had dropped a couple of C notes just prepping for this because I was going to use the Winsor Newton. I was going to pick the top brand if I'm going to start it. I'm going to use them. Sometimes I'll start with a student grade on a new material, but Winsor Newton was really the only one to be making them at that time because it was kind of their gig. So I didn't really have a choice. If I wanted to get something good quality, they had figured out the chemistry first. So anyway, if you don't care about because the cleanup for oils is also very specific. It is a toxic material. You do have to clean it up properly. You can't just dump turpentines down the sink. Not a good idea. Warning, warning. Please don't do that. It's very bad. Not only is it bad for the fish, it's also wicked flammable. It's not good for your plumbing. So how do we dispose of it, Jay? That's the sucky part. You have to go to your local whatever your state or country determines as where you dispose of toxic materials, wherever you are. I know that we have like a resource reclamation or whatever. Your art store that you get the oils at should be able to tell you where you can dispose of the stuff. Sometimes paint stores have the available disposal for it. I know in the US they charge, it's like a 75-cent fee for every can of paint that you buy to help with proper disposal of it. For instance, if you have a can of house paint, it's like regular latex house paint, did you know you cannot just throw that away with paint in it? You need to open it up and let the paint dry completely, like solid. But that's okay, because guess what? They actually sell. I love this. It would be like really horrible practical jokes. They sell a chemical that you can add to latex paint to harden it up in the can. So, like whatever the leftovers are. If it's like old paint, you need to get rid of it. So you can just solidify it right there. And what a horrible practical joke that would be for somebody to kind of like open up a can of paint, try to use it. And it's a solid rock of acrylic. I have come to the realization that this will not be finished tonight. And that's fine. Is my camera's drifting. You guys must be getting a very entertaining view of things if the camera's drifting. Let me tighten that up. Okay. And with these ice sections, I think one of the things that I'm going to try to do is get some light into them so that they do look like they're reflecting something. Right now, I'm just putting that base tone in. Kind of that really light teal. Have to make some more paint. I'm going to follow my own advice and use my palette knife. I have little tiny ones. I've actually got a whole slew of different palette knives, but that's, again, like if you're doing this and you're trying to make a living at it, you know, you go ahead and you make the investment in the equipment, just like anything else. Or if you got the money and you're just like really, really interested in it and want to do it and have some fun with it, and you don't mind going ahead and investing, be my guest. Great stuff. I try to mitigate costs wherever I can. I've had, some good luck and bad luck with that. I think we all have. No business is perfect, and certainly the business of being a creative is not. So you got to watch out for
cost of materials and cost of your time and all that stuff. But I don't want to go off on business right now. I want to have fun. I'm having fun with space fantasy. So do we figure out, I got to figure out a variation of Ariadne. It sounds like a planet name. Or even a city name. It doesn't have to be the whole planet. It can be the city. My least favorite sci-fi movie? Oh gosh. Oh man. That's so hard. There's so much bad sci-fi out there. Like some of the really bad sci-fi, I like it because it's just funny. Worst sci-fi, least favorite sci-fi. I'm not super into sci-fi horror. And although I acknowledge that there's a lot of really wonderful craft in a lot of that stuff, I like intrigue, suspense, and stuff like that more. So I think if we're going to think about sci-fi broadly, I don't know. There's some really, like, you know what? I really had not a lot of use for a few of the well, pretty much any of the next gen movies from Star Trek were kind of like just episodes with a more expensive budget. Oh, but that's it. Okay, that's it. My least favorite sci-fi movie has to be Star Trek V. Star Trek V made me want to really just like gouge my eyes out halfway through. I just couldn't. I'd even watch, like, you know, Michael Bay's like fourth or fifth attempt at Transformers, then watch that. Did not enjoy that whatsoever. I think Shatner directed that one. And I'm kind of glad that they are not letting him ever direct another one. Or they didn't let him direct another one, rather. Nimoy ended up being a good director. He directed 3 and 4. 4th still being like probably the one that most people really, really enjoy. It was weird. Star Trek, like, their movies, the even numbered ones were really good, and the odd numbered ones kind of always fell slightly short, if not completely baffled the mind as to who decided to give this thing a budget. What's funny is that, you know, sci-fi now is getting blurred with fantasy and with horror. It kind of like there's a lot of sci-fi that rides the line of all of it. And the whole wake of, dystopian things is just like super crazy. How many television series and whatnot are out there that are based on dystopias? And so it's really, there's just a lot to absorb in the sci-fi and fantasy area. I mean, to the point where, Sci-Fi Network changed its name years ago to be SYFY because they just, they wanted to make sure they could also capture the fantasy market because there were so many crossovers. But I wanted this particular painting, getting back to the painting, to be very much like a classic, like old sci-fi sort of look. I wanted that retro look to it. I really didn't want to I didn't want to end up with it looking like pretty much anything else. I didn't want it to be slick. I wanted to admit to the flaws of the medium. Okay, so here we go. Now I'm going to show you something that's particular to oil paint. Let's get a little bit closer in on that moon. I don't know if you can actually even see this. The light's so bright. But I'm putting some teal around the edges of the moon. And then I can take a brush that should be mostly dry, if not dry completely. That's why I constantly have paper towels around. And the oils can blend into a beautiful gradient tone effortlessly because they're not like they're not drying so quickly. And like I said, they're malleable. They remain malleable for a long time. So you can really play with them and do all sorts of stuff with them. And you can use them dry-ish, wet, all sorts of different textures. One thing you can also do with them is paint with them just like acrylics. You can go ahead and paint with them with palette knife, and that has tremendous effects on it. That really does some wonderful stuff. So let's try to get back to some of the other things we were working on, or rather that like I was working on even before we started this, and looks like my friend's album is over. Like really thinking about the details are super important when it comes to this stuff. And a lot of the reason for that is because you want something that is convincing. And, you can I'm sorry, my cat is very distracting right now. You want something that viewers can look at and, really be able to relate and say, that looks plausible. So super important to make sure that your details stand out. I'm painting relatively small right now when it comes to this. This is like a 16 by 20 canvas, which is really small for this genre. Normally, I'd be painting you want to do really big. And the reason for that is quite simple, because in illustration, you want to pack the detail in for the print. And in order to pack the detail in for the print, you've got to make sure that you are working big enough so that when it gets scanned and modified and put into a book or a publication, any sort of publication, that it comes out looking hyper detailed. I'll give you a perfect for instance. If you look at N.C. Wyeth, not Andrew Wyeth, you look at N.C. Wyeth's illustrations for Treasure Island, way back. He did the Treasure Island series of paintings and covers and whatnot. Those paintings, in actuality, like the size of the actual painting, it's a mural size. It's the size of a wall. It's not a small piece. So when he goes ahead and has it reproduced, the detail is tremendous, because you're seeing it as a little tiny book illustration. He made it the size of a wall. So imagine how much detail you can put in on something that size, like a mural. And then when it gets reproduced back down, you end up with, just like this artwork that is just stunning in the amount of detail in it. So again, doing this like this is really not the size you should be working in. So I have a friend, Bob Eggleton, who is a sci-fi illustrator. I think I've mentioned him before. And he works on like a lot of Godzilla stuff and monsters, and he's been doing cover art for major publishers for, well, he's got like a 30, 40-year career. He's been doing it. And I've had him submit pieces for shows that I've curated, and his work is tremendous, but it's also physically tremendous. And when I think that's going on the outside of a 5.5 by 8 inch cover of a book, it's amazing. And I think, well, that's why it looks so stunning, because it's huge, and then you're printing it tiny. I love tricks of the trade like that. They make me so happy. Actually, they make me feel like it's something I tell my students. It's like, why are you trying to make it super detailed at that size? And they do. They because they see it at that size, and they try to make it that size. They try to make it huge and super detailed at that size. It's not what the pros do. Even when I'm working digitally, I work on a pretty large size canvas, but working digitally, you have the advantage of zooming in to like every pixel, which you can't do here unless I had like, a magnifying glass, which I do have a magnifying glass. I have a table magnifying glass that I use when I'm working on really tight work, usually when I'm doing some model painting or something like that. But yeah, so there's that. Again, if you are watching this on YouTube or you are watching through Facebook, please like the page or follow me on YouTube. I'd love to be able to share with you a whole bunch of stuff that I'm working on. You can also catch more tutorials on my Vimeo channel. And all of these links for all of these things can be found on my website. Haha, there we go. Cartoonsandcreatures.com is the place to go. Every page has the social media links on it, and you can get and link to the Facebook, the Twitter, the stuff falling on the ground, every little bit of where I'm at out there. The only one that is not hooked up to that is, oddly enough, the one that I'm on. Haps TV doesn't have a social media icon that's currently working with Weebly, which is where I build my site. But that's because Haps is still kind of in beta. And I recommend any of you who like to do video to get on Haps. Or if you just like to see really cool content, go to haps.tv. And you can see some really wonderful content from amazing creators. Myself, if you subscribe to me on Haps, you can show your appreciation for the art on Haps by dropping what's called an award. And that's usually just like a 50 cents here or something like that, just to say, hey, that was a nice comment, et cetera, et cetera. So you can support my art and support what I'm trying to do with these tutorials, if you'd like to, by going on to Haps. And again, don't feel obligated. It's fine if you're not on Haps. So as you can see, just putting in the windows on these things really kind of ups the ante on it. It turns it more real. All of a sudden, it becomes something that's not a block, but is something that can be occupied, something that is going to have shared space by some sort of being. Light gets in. And when I mention some sort of being, my beagle, of course, has to chime in, because he is definitely a being. It's one of my beagles. I have two. And that was my older one. That's Toby. Toby's 16 years young. He's spry as a puppy. Just as mischievous. So what's the wild thing to think about? I didn't catch what comment that was in response to. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to keep track of that, but my computer's kind of in back of me a little bit. I'm sorry. So that was probably the proportion of the painting to the publication, correct? I think that's what I was talking about. You probably wrote that. Let's see here. That's kind of bright. We're going to go with some darkened windows over there, and then I'll put in some highlights afterwards. So I don't like how that's coming out. That's not my favorite. I will have to revisit that after it is more dry. That doesn't look good. But it's fixable. Everything's fixable. Now it is 7:14, and normally I end the session somewhere. Yes, Toby, thank you. I end the session somewhere around 7:30. I'm probably going to keep going for a little bit. Not too terribly long after my normal ending time, just so that I can get a little bit more done into here. But this will definitely be picked up next week, and we will be right back into this painting. I will probably work on it a little bit over the week, but I have commissions to do, so this might just wait on its easel for you all to return and come and watch and work. And this will give you some time to actually pick up if you want to learn how to use this particular material, you will have plenty of time to pick up your own water-soluble oil, and we can paint together, and you can ask me questions about, and I can functionality. I can talk to some tips and tricks. So if you wanted to learn more about how to use this paint, then I would recommend, just going right ahead and picking some up over the next week or so, coming back in, and I'll be happy to talk to you about your practice and answer questions. And I'm going to buy a thinner brush over the week for my oils, so that it doesn't look it. I am struggling here to make sure that that stays straight. Woo, boy. Doing pretty good on it, though. The city shapes are interesting. I never quite know what I'm going to come up with. There are some shapes that I constantly use. This is not one of them. This is an oddball shape for me. And again, all these things, get a totally other layer of detail on top of them. This is just, you build and build and build and build. And that's kind of part of this. Illustrating with oils is a lot more difficult and requires patience. So one of the things that I found from people that I've worked with and around is when they're working with oils, they normally have several pieces going on at one time. So, it's not uncommon to walk into an oil painter studio and see 4 or 5 things up that they're working on, because they have to wait between dry times for things so much that it doesn't make sense to just be working on one canvas. I'm going to put this away for a week. It'll be plenty set by that time. It usually takes about 8 hours to be able to paint over a section. Well, anyway. So I could easily revisit this at, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be able to paint back into this. I'm not going to do that because my alarm normally goes off at 5 anyway. So yeah, there's that. And my college all-nighter days are long gone. Is it weird to say that I miss them? I sort of feel like they were wasted. When they say youth is wasted on the young, they're right. They're so very right. If I could have been as productive as I am now during the hours that I spent goofing off late at night as a college student, as an art student, sometimes I'd be making art. In fact, most of the time I'd be making art. But there were times when it was just couldn't sleep, didn't want to sleep, hang out with friends. And when I think about how much art I could have generated on all those times I wasted. That's okay. I generated other things. I generated relationships and all that jazz. Yeah, no, I probably should have still been making art. Trying to develop new skills. Okay. All right, we're at 7:21. Does anybody have any questions about this stuff that we're working on? There's 71 of you out there that have viewed this, which is fabulous. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to subscribe on HAPS YouTube or follow the Facebook, I'd be super appreciative. Also, you can find me on Instagram. That's where you'll see a lot of work when it gets done, but you'll see more and my blog and portfolio from without having to scroll down, for 20 or 30 minutes just to get to my old work on Instagram. You can visit my portfolio at cartoonsandcreatures.com and see, what I've got there for cartoons, for creatures, for murals, for scenic design, for faux painting, for all the fun things that I do. And I think are fun. Faux painting is one of my favorites. The illusion of creating a surface and a type of material on that surface that tricks somebody. Not that I want to trick them, but that convinces somebody just by how they look, just by how it's painted, that it's another material is so fun. Love doing that. And that's something that I picked up in stage design that, is really practical when I'm making signs and stuff, because I can paint pretty much any texture. You want a marble sign? I'll paint the marble. It's a lot cheaper. One of the things that's up on the Instagram is a sign that I did for Coffee Connection that looks like it's wooden. I painted it. So the wood grain on that is totally just acrylic. Actually, in that case, it's latex. So it's just latex house paint that I, turned into glazes and was able to kind of create the full look. On the website, you'll see, and I also have tutorials available on how to do it because it's fun. And I teach stuff like that online for, theater conferences and whatnot, because it's very useful in scenic design. The illusion. Oof, too late. Mixing wet on wet is fun. Yeah. So far, so good. I'm liking this so far. It's making me happy. You know what else makes me happy? You all make me happy. Seriously. I'm exceedingly grateful that you tune in. I'm going to do that with a signature brush when I pick one up. I'm not going to keep going with that because that's just going to be maddening and drive me crazy. I'm going to go back up to our friend here that we started with. Yes, I use Meaden brand easels. I picked this one up because I wanted something really good. Do you ever worry about not mixing the right amount of paint you'll use? I can never get the ratio right. Yeah, you know what? I do. When I have contracts where I have to keep going back and back and back, you can usually get these. And what this is you can make a whole bunch of your own paint and you can tube it. So you make your own tubes of paint. So I've done that. I had a client that wanted a double-sided muraled sign. And so the paint color that she wanted for the background was really unique. Oh, I'm so happy you discovered me too, Marge. So when we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on it throughout the entire contract, trying to determine just what was the right, color for her that would do the job for her, right? And we finally hit it. And when I finally hit it, I did not want to lose that color. So I mixed up a giant amount of it and made a really big tube full. I still have that tube. The reason I still have it, this project was like, 4 or 5 years ago. The reason I still have the tube, just in case I ever have to do a touch-up. Because again, it's a sign, it's outdoors. So if it ever needs anything, I mean, it's polyed and everything, so it should last for a good long time, but nothing lasts forever. And I would hate to try to color match that again. So I hope that answers your question. You can just, if you know that you're going to be using a particular tone over and over and over again, or a base tone, like if you've got a mid-tone to something, right? So you really like, if there's a middle tone that you're going to base a lot of your stuff on, you're either going to make it lighter or darker as you go along, so you can add whatever you need to, a little bit more white, a little bit more blue or brown or whatever. You can mix up a tube of the mid-tone. And those tubes are a whopping 89 cents. I think I got those at Blick. So, and you can also, you can order anything online now, right? So you can easily order empty paint tubes. And the way I think about it is, that's the technology. Aluminum paint tubes is a technology that allowed painting plein air. So, if it was good enough for the Impressionists, it's good enough for me. You're welcome. I'm sorry if I start going off on stuff, guys. It's the art history teacher in me. Like, where did that originate? And it's also the ADHD in me. So all those fun little factors combined, and you end up with an ADHD art history teacher painting and telling you tips. Ooh, that's just a bad combo. So one of the things that I really liked about the sci-fi genre when it came to stuff in the 70s, when it came to, really groundbreaking turn, which was Star Wars, was that things didn't have to look clean anymore. you could go ahead and you could make stuff cruddy and use older. I'm glad you like the art history in school. I did too. Here I am, 12 art history courses later. But what I loved about it was that they redefined the genre by allowing things to get dirty and used. These were functional ships for them. They were things that, life was being lived out in space. It was dirty. It was messy. It put a lot more into it that I don't think people expected, that just made it look, just gave it grit, Just the view of that first view in the first Star Wars that came out. Star Wars was the first movie, by the way, I ever saw in a theater. I was little. I was like 4. My dad decided to bring me to Star Wars at a second run theater out in East Providence, Rhode Island. And I loved every part of it except the garbage monster. Freaked the hell out of me. I had nightmares for so long that the garbage monster was coming to get me. Oh, that little peaky eye popping up in the middle of the garbage. Ooh, not good for me as a kid. Like now I don't really care, but yeah, that garbage monster, oof, that did not do well with me. And this is not doing well for me. I'm really screwing this up. I'm getting to the point where I think I'm getting too tired and I'm messing up. So I might call it a night before I do irreparable damage. That's what happens when I'm doing construction too. I reach a point where if I start making mistakes, I have to stop. So it is 7:33. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of like, I am messing up a little bit here, and I'd rather not because I'm really enjoying the painting and I want it to turn out really, really well. I will be bringing it back to you next week, and we'll go ahead and try to level that I want it to be at. So it's storytelling and it has features to it that really up the drama, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all the angles of the ships and everything, really want those to get emphasized, and that city has to get a lot more detail in it. So it's got a long way to go. We probably won't finish it next week either, but that's okay. Not a problem. As per usual, I will definitely show you when it is done. And I do have this week off from the day job. I do have a lot of stuff scheduled in, but I'm going to be taking some time here and there to be able to do some of this. I won't work on this in the meantime. I'll be working on the contracts, so I will have more time for this next Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. And once again, as we always do, stay safe, stay healthy, and make art. See you next week.